Joining me now, we bring back April Rivero, but we also have Bob Pack, whose tragic story made headlines across the country when his then 7-year-old daughter and 10-year-old son were out with their mother walking along the sidewalk on their way to the ice cream parlor when a drunk driver came careening into them, killing his daughter Alana instantly and his son Troy, who died a few hours later. Bob, tell us that day exactly what happened and what you know now about the woman driving the car.
Well, it was a really warm Sunday afternoon, late October. It just happened to be like an Indian summer day, and the kids, we all had a barbecue dinner, and they were excited and jumping around wanting to have some ice cream. And so my wife Carmen took Troy and Alana to a walk, about a mile walk to a local ice cream store from our house. We had done it many times and liked doing it. And coming in the opposite direction was a car driven by a 45-year-old woman who, unbeknownst then, was abusing alcohol and prescription narcotics. And she crossed several lanes of the road and drove off the road and killed my 2 children and injured my wife, Carmen.
I mean, there's almost no words for this.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. You can say, you know, well, if so-and-so hadn't been here or something. They're on the sidewalk. They're doing what people do, living a wonderful life and enjoying a lovely sort of late summer afternoon.
Yeah.
And you know, how can you do better than that?
Well, it's a struggle for us to, you know, certainly live with that thought of, you know, allowing them to go out for the walk and the unfortunate timing of the car and them being in the same spot at the same time. But, you know, since that, my wife and I have been active in trying to understand why it occurred and then take some action on learning how did this woman, you know, get a hold of this many amount of drugs and what can be done about it. And so what we learned was very quickly that she was a typical doctor shopper that you've already talked to on the show, and that she was obtaining hundreds and thousands of narcotic pills, mainly painkillers, but also other pills such as muscle relaxants. And she was addicted to these drugs, and she was a typical, what's known as a doctor shopper, going to many different doctors, and in her case, many within the same HMO. And she was just being given prescription after prescription. And
the doctor shopper means that this doctor doesn't know what that doctor's doing, and they, you know, it's almost like a cat who keeps eating at everybody's house and nobody knows where the cat really belongs. So she was just, these weren't dirty doctors, these were unknowing doctors.
Yes, these doctors just weren't armed with the proper information, and so they're unwittingly you know, contributing to the abuse problem. And so that's a big national problem that we have. And when I learned about that, I thought immediately, naively thinking, why don't the doctors and pharmacists have this information so they don't contribute to the problem? They need the information so they aren't intentionally getting drugs into the abuser's hands, but they need to keep it in the hands of the people who legitimately need it for, you know, pain and other types of disorders. So we set up and we formed a state committee, including the Department of Justice for California, doctors, pharmacists, and other healthcare organization people to look at the problem and see what we could do. I particularly had a technology background, and so I was really interested in the fact that there was already a database in California called Cures, and the state requires that pharmacists have 7 days after filling a Schedule 2, 3, or 4 drug to submit that into this Cures database. So the database collects all the information. What I was alarmed at was the fact that doctors and pharmacists don't have easy access to that data. And so you have a gold mine of prescription history data for the patient, but if they don't have the ability to see it at the time of prescribing, then really I thought, what good is it? It needs to be in the hands of the doctors and the pharmacies so they can make an informed decision. And it's not that, you know, we're against the nature of the drugs themselves, because They do help people who have legitimate problems, particularly pain. You know, everybody certainly, I'm sure, has a different opinion about whether these drugs, how easy they should be able to get them. But I felt that technology could play a role in getting that information so that it can stop the doctor shoppers at the point of getting a prescription.
But that has to be used, right? I mean, the doctor has to actually go in and do it. And I wanted to tell you, Dr. Richard Gracer, who was our guest just beforehand, he says, I use it every day.
Yes.
And just can't imagine why every doctor is not using it every day.
Yeah. In a perfect world, I wish that were the case. And I wish it were nationally, but you know, we set out in California because the federal government has certain role on a national level, but they leave it up to states to control prescription drugs and legislate that and apply technology and so on. So we started out in California to look at that problem and say, okay, what technology, what can we do to get this data instantly, in our case, over the web, so that doctors and pharmacists could have the instant access and sort of be that last line of defense in stopping the abuse or contributing to the abuse in doctor shopping. And so we set out several years ago to set up a real-time access system to the Cures database. And that was launched by the Attorney General's office, Jerry Brown, last October. And since then, we've been working with Senator Mark DeSaulnier on writing a new Senate bill for 2010, which is Senate Bill 1071. And Senator DeSaulnier is spearheading a really great effort to put this bill through the state Senate this year. And basically what that will do is provide long-term funding for this real-time Cures program. You know, the state just doesn't have the money, and the federal government isn't applying enough money to states in order to implement these systems. And so, you know, and then with a downturn economy, it's just really a struggle to find the proper resources. And so this bill will require that the drug manufacturers pay a very small fee per pill distributed in California, and that will go into a specific fund to fund the Cures project. And so we're hoping that that provides the long-term funding for this.
Now, April, this would not have helped in Joey's situation, though. Is that correct? Because what we're talking with the Cures bill and with the pending Senate bill is doctors who really do care about and just need a way of making sure that their patients aren't doctor shopping. Whereas in Joey's case...
However, there's another element. I know this round of the bill is not, or this bill is not going to take care of this problem, but my vision is that ultimately every doctor will be required to use the system. And if we can get that in place, then all this data is going to be there. Then you've got the DEA or whomever, whichever agency would do this, monitor what's happening with the doctors. How are they prescribing? What levels are they prescribing per drug? So then that would have potentially picked up on this dirty doctor and removed her from the scene, so what happened to Joey wouldn't have happened. So.
So you have, so there really are two kind of parts to the problem. One is the doctor shopper, the end user who is, you know, found the loophole in the system to go around and sort of trick doctors into prescribing, you know, the medication to feed their habit. And then you have the part of pill farms like rogue pharmacies or doctors who are distributing the pills for financial gain. And so both elements are a problem in society. And so one of the things the Cures database can do is it's run into California under the Department of Justice, and they have full access to that system. But the electronic portion, which we're doing now, will even make it easier because it'll provide daily, weekly, monthly reports to law enforcement to be able to have knowledge about these pharmacists or doctors who are also abusing their privileges for financial gain. And so I think it can help in two ways. And, you know, providing the information really readily accessed by the law enforcement could have helped, or maybe even saved Joey, because maybe it would have been a red flag a year ago or two if we had that in place, and they could have stopped this this doctor from overprescribing.
Well, in Joey's case, there is a DA investigation going on the doctor that did the prescribing. And
that doctor should, I mean, you know, maybe this is just too simplified, but she's a murderer.
She is definitely a murderer in my mind. She gave him a loaded gun. Yeah. Pure and simple. We have learned very recently that this doctor's prescribing habits have resulted in not just Joey's death, but somebody else. They wouldn't tell us any of the facts around that, but there have other people have died as a result of her prescribing. So
when I started to look at the collection of the amount of pills that are distributed in California, it's quite alarming. 9 years ago, when they started collecting the data from pharmacists on prescription medications, there was roughly 200 million pills back about 9 years ago distributed. Last year there were 2 billion distributed in California. So that's a lot of pain medication that's out there. It's almost, you know, it's a tenfold increase. And so the growth and of the use of these medications is really alarming, and that's what I think most people just don't realize.
I think what both of you are doing, when it would certainly be understandable if you said, I don't even, you know, I can't possibly help other people, my loss is so great, and yet both of you have said, I'm not going to let my children's death be in vain. And I'm floored. I can't even imagine how you could get up in the morning after these first things happened, and then let alone to go forward and say, I'm going to continue talking about this every day. Real quick, Bob, what can we as a community do to help support this bill?
Well, it's being introduced by Senator Mark DeSaulnier. You could contact his office in Concord or in Sacramento. You could look it up on the web, and you could write a letter of support or just offer verbal support for this bill, and that'll help. He can pass that along into the Senate, into the committees that are needed to get this bill through.
All right, and we all have information, so you both know, going up about both the foundation, the coalition that you're working on, and people can go to those sites too and do what they have to do. It's just an amazing thing that both of you have been able to do this today.
Thank you.
Well, that will do it for this special edition of Conversations with Robin Farr. I'd like to thank all my guests whose personal stories and expertise have brought home the fact that prescription drug abuse doesn't just happen to other people's families. It's happening right here in our beautiful Tri-Valley, and we've all got to come together to face the reality of this underreported problem and join forces to prevent it. Do try this at home. Talk to your kids and anyone else you love and let them know what they may not even be aware of, and you may even save a life. Thank you for joining us for Prescription Drug Abuse, a special conversation with Robin Farr. Goodbye. If you'd like to order a copy of this show, please visit our website at trivalleytv.org.